This video is going to demonstrate how to calculate frequency distributions in SPSS. I have opened the dataset for the GSS 2006 and I have the data editor window open. What we're going to do is we're going to get a better feel for the way that syntax works, and we're going to calculate a frequency distribution for the variable race. We're going to use the drop-down menus to calculate this frequency distribution. Start by going to the Analyze menu, and you'll see once you click on it a bunch of options will drop down. We're going to go to Descriptive Statistics, and then we're going to go over to Frequencies. You'll see there's several options here on Descriptive Statistics. We're going to click this first one, which is Frequencies. And you're going to see that dialog box pops up. Now, my data set right now is not showing me variable names, it's showing me variable labels. So before I go on, I'm going to go and fix that by canceling. And I'm going to go to Edit Options. And in my variable list, I'm going to display names alphabetically. Okay. You might have to do that every time you open the data set, but hopefully those changes will stay put. So now I'm going to go back to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequencies. You can see now my variable list is the names of the variables, not their labels. And we want to select the variable race. There's two ways to do that. You can start typing in the box, or you can scroll because it's alphabetical, so you know you need to go down to the R's, and you can take your cursor and go down to find the variable race. If you just start typing in the box, then you will jump down to that variable as well. So if you click on the arrow in the middle, you'll put the highlighted variable into this variable box right here on the right. So now we're telling SPSS that this variable, race, is the variable that we want to analyze. So at this point, you could just click OK down here, but then you won't have a record of the instructions that you are telling SPSS. So it is far better to click the Paste option, which we're going to do now. When you click the Paste option, a syntax editor window will pop open. In this syntax window, you have text where it shows us the instructions that we're telling SPSS about the analysis we're about to conduct. The syntax window works a lot like a word processor. You can cut and paste text, and you can type anything you want. In addition to the directions that you give SPSS, you can also write notes to yourself so you remember what it was that you were doing. SPSS can only understand things that are written in its special language. But if you start anything with an asterisk, like this, and give yourself a note, something like run a frequency distribution for the variable race, and then you end it with a period, SPSS knows to ignore it because the words that you wrote are between an asterisk and a period, and SPSS ignores anything that looks like that. So you'll see that it's kind of grayed out and it's a little bit more difficult to read. SPSS knows to skip over that. If we were to remove this period, you can see everything is gray. SPSS does not know that your note stops and the command begins. So make sure you start with an asterisk and end with a period. You can write yourself as many notes as you would like. It's always a good idea to save your syntax file as you go because it won't automatically save like a Microsoft Word file or an Excel file. So go ahead and go to File and then Save As and put it on the cloud or put it on a drive somewhere. So you can go back and open this file for reference later on if you want to frequency distribution, or if you're doing an exam or any sort of lab or something like that. Okay, so now we want to actually run our syntax. So in order to run the syntax, we can do a couple of different things. We can highlight the entire piece, and we can right-click and select to run selection, or you can highlight this piece and you can hit run up here, or you can hit this big green arrow. I like the green arrow because it's very easy to find, and so this is the one that I tend to hit. So I'm going to select that big green arrow, which will run the selection. The third window of SPSS has now opened up. So we have our data editor window in the background. We have our syntax editor, which is the second window that popped up. And now we have this third window, and this is where our output or our results will show up. And you can make that bigger so you can take a look at it. Okay, so what SPSS has done is it has produced output for us, and we can take a look at the statistics and the frequency distribution for the variable race. The variable race, you can see, has 4,510 people responding. That's our N. And nobody's missing, which means that everybody answered this question and provided a response. So this variable asks about the race of the respondent, and the options are white, black, or other. So now we can answer some questions about this variable. So for example, how many people were interviewed to make this data set? You can go up to this part up here, this first box of information, and see that it's 4,510. And if I were to ask how many of these people were black, you could go down here and you can look at the frequency distribution. So we have the frequency column. This is the raw numbers. Then we have a percent column and a valid percent column. In this particular example, it doesn't matter if we look at the percent or the valid percent because everybody answered the question. But for the most part, you always want to look at this valid percent column. Always make sure you're looking at that valid percent column. The reason we want to make sure that we look at the valid percent is because valid percent is taking account the fact that some people might not answer that question and we might have missing data. We don't want the missing to be calculated in the percentage column. So make sure you're looking at valid percent. So we can see that 634 people identify as black, and that's a frequency. And if I asked you what percentage of respondents were white, you could look over to the valid percent and see 72.8%. So what you can do is you can make frequency distributions of lots of different variables. And by doing this, you can start to understand your data set a little bit better.